So you guys new to concealed carry, or maybe you've been carrying strong side for years and you want to know what all this appendix carry hype's about. Maybe you're kind of stuck carrying a smaller firearm and however it is you're carrying it, and you want to be able to step up to something a little bit bigger. Well, today we're going to break all of this down. We're going to talk specifics about appendix carry, the pros and the cons, a couple of tips and tricks that will help you guys succeed, and what all this hype is actually about. Stick around. So welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is John Collins. I'm the owner of Risen Holster Co. And like I said, today we are talking appendix carry. If you guys are new to the channel, thank you for tuning in. If you wouldn't mind, hit a like on this video and maybe even think about subscribing. Definitely helps us out getting all our analytics through the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff. But today, like I said, we're going to talk appendix carry today. So instead of kind of giving a general overview of it, I want to go back to the very beginning, and we're going to talk as somebody that maybe doesn't have an idea of what appendix carry is, and we're going to work our way through it. Like I said, pros, cons, tips, all those things. Now, before I do get into any demonstrations or anything like that, I do want to just get it out there, point it out. All the firearms you see in front of you have been cleared. There are no magazines in the firearms, and the few mags that you see have been unloaded as well. So everything is safety checked, everything is cleared. I am pointing these firearms in a safe position in any of the demonstrations that you see. Just let everybody know we have crossed our T's, dotted our I's. We are being as safe as possible with any of the demonstrations you're about to see. So to start from the very beginning, what even is appendix carry? Now, when you're carrying inside the waistband, you typically have three different ways that you're going to carry the firearm. You're going to have your strong side carry, where the firearm is on your hip, kind of at that 4 o'clock position. If you want to carry on your back, it's called small of back. That is where it's going to be inside your belt, but kind of along this back section here. And then the third option, the growing popular option, is appendix carry. So appendix, just like the name implies, is going to be setting the holster in your front section here about where your appendix is located at. If you were to look down at the floor and imagine your belt being a clock, it's going to be somewhere between this 12 o'clock and 1:30 position. That's kind of where we're going to put the holster. And we're going to adjust that just dependent upon body type, depends a little bit on what firearm you're carrying and any accessories on the firearm. We'll get into some of that later. But general is we're carrying inside the waistband between the 12 and the 1:30 position. All right, so let's get into the pros and the cons and what would make appendix carry a good choice for you, or maybe what's going to deter you from it. The first pro, most people are always going to kind of agree that appendix carry gives you the fastest draw time. Now, I'm going to throw a few little clips of B-roll here in the background to kind of show you guys the comparison between appendix carry draw times and strong side draw times. Not necessarily the times themselves, but I want you to actually see what it looks like to get the firearm out of the holster and present it to a target. Now, first we'll show strong side. So in this position, we have to reach around with our opposite hand from our draw hand and grab our shirt. Now, if you're carrying on the hip, I mean, that's a pretty far distance for some people to be reaching all the way around and grabbing that shirt. We have to lift that shirt up to get it out of the way of our holster and our firearm. We have to grab, and then we have to draw. Now, the problem with drawing from this position is you can kind of see in the video here, my arm is already kind of up a little bit higher than my shoulder is wanting to go. Now, if you're not flexible at all, this can definitely be a problem because you have to draw high enough up with your shoulder to get your muzzle of your firearm to come loose from that holster. Now, in a lot of cases, that means you're gonna have to lean over and give your body a little bit more space between your shoulder and your hip to give you that clearance to get the firearm out. Then from there, it's coming forward to your chest and presenting to your target. Conversely, if we're going to show this in comparison with appendix carry, and you'll see this video now, appendix carry, everything is forward of our hips, which makes things much more ergonomic. So same exact idea of using my left hand to grab the shirt and get the shirt out of the way, but really I'm just grabbing the front of my shirt here and I'm pulling it up. And you can see that the holster is right there. The firearm is right there. So I'm going to reach down, I'm going to get a good purchase on my grip, I'm going to draw. Obviously, it's a much more ergonomic position from here too, to be able to just pull straight up versus trying to fight my shoulder mobility to get this thing out of its holster. And then from there, we present. So you can see that as far as draw time goes, it is a bit more ergonomic and most likely going to be, for most people, a bit quicker to draw from the appendix position. Now, pro number 2 for appendix carry is going to be concealment. Now, this is going to kind of depend person to person, but on a whole, most people are going to find it easier to conceal a firearm in the appendix position versus carrying at the strong side. I'm going to speak specifically to my own personal experience. I have a horrible time trying to carry strong side. I have decent love handles. It's just where I store most of my extra body fat. And so that already kind of overhangs my belt line on my sides. Trying to cram a holster and a firearm in there, especially anything that is, you know, a decent sized firearm, that is about impossible for me. I print all over the place. It's not very comfortable. It's just not the way that I can carry successfully. Conversely, in the appendix position, we have a bunch of surface area to work with here. There tends to be, for most people, not as much from the waistline down, kind of like fitment issues as far as that goes. For us guys, we tend to have a little bit of a drape, whether that is from our chest overhanging and the shirt draping from there, or even from your stomach. If that is out far enough to help the shirt drape over top of your waistline, it's just much easier to conceal in that position. Getting into our third pro, that kind of tails off the end of the second pro, is being able to carry a slightly bigger firearm. So because we are really only dealing with the length of the slide and the barrel, and we're carrying in this appendix position, adding that length doesn't really affect the concealability, and to a large degree doesn't really affect the comfort of the holster or the firearm in that position. We do have to be a little bit mindful as we go bigger as far as the grip size. You have to be mindful if you've got flared mag wells and that kind of stuff on your firearm, you're going to have a little bit of a tendency for it to print there, but really that's not going to be any more or less of a tendency than it would be if it was in the strong side position. The longer the grip goes tends to be the less concealable a firearm is. In the strong side position though, you will find that having that longer slide and that longer barrel tends to make the firearm harder to conceal in that area. A lot of times we'll be able to actually see, because of the shape of our bodies, that the barrel and the slide will have a tendency to stick out through our pants on the side there and make the firearm less concealable. So that brings us into our fourth pro, and as much as this is a pro, this could also be a con for others, but we're going to start it off as the pro that I think it is, and that is comfort. So I have, again, like I said, big love handles. It is difficult for me to conceal on the strong side position, and as much as it's difficult to conceal, it is also very uncomfortable for me. Versus the appendix position, I have a much easier time finding a comfortable spot to put the holster, and I can carry for very long periods of time, pretty much all day long, or as long as I want to carry in this position without having any issues at all. Now, this is going to, again, differ person to person. It's also going to differ based off of your firearm. It's going to differ whether you're carrying a light or not carrying a light. Just the overall size of the holster that you're putting in your pants, it's going to kind of drive how comfortable it can be. But again, I have found that I can carry a Glock 17, even at times I carried a Glock 34 for fun, or especially now I'm carrying this X Macro. I have a much easier time comfortably concealing this in this position versus trying to carry it in any other spot. The con side of the comfort, and this is going to be con number one, is the mental side of concealed carry at the appendix position, is for a lot of people a deal breaker, because we're putting a loaded firearm. If you're doing it right, you're going to have one in the chamber, and you are putting that loaded firearm in a position where that barrel is flagging a lot of vital areas on our body. And for a lot of people, that's just a deal breaker in and of itself. Now, a couple ways to kind of combat this, if I'm going to argue against it, is shoot your firearm a whole bunch. Find out if it's actually going to be reliable, if it's actually going to perform the way it's supposed to. If you're getting a lot of misfeeds, if you're getting a lot of issues with your firearm, then I would say don't carry it in the appendix position. We definitely want to have the trust in this thing that it's going to do what it's supposed to do, and it's not going to do anything else. And if you don't have that trust, then appendix carry is not going to be for you. Maybe in that specific scenario, it's either a good idea to get a separate firearm altogether or to carry off body somehow. But if you can have the trust in the firearm that it's going to do what it's supposed to do, if you can have the trust in your ability to do what you're supposed to do when drawing that firearm, then appendix carry and the mental comfort side of it shouldn't be an issue. But for some, it will be, and that is perfectly fine. That is why it is listed as con number one. Now, con number two for appendix carry, and this is kind of a little bit more nuanced, but for the most part, in any kind of a concealed carry scenario that has been documented to happen in real life, those kinds of things happen within 7 yards. I'm sure a lot of you that have gotten into any of the specifics, you have seen that number, 7 yards, and that's fairly close. So a lot of times those altercations can result in hand-to-hand kind of face-on type stuff. And people will argue that the appendix position allows easier access for the assailant to get a hold of your firearm versus strong side carry. Now, that again is going to differ situation to situation. Hopefully it doesn't come to a hands-on type thing, but if it was to, either your shirt can get pulled up and the bad guy sees that you have a gun and it's easily accessible to him, or maybe you go to reach for it and it's just easier for him to see when you're that close that that's what you're going for, so he can grab it, or he can grab your hand and keep you from being able to grab it. There's just a little bit higher of a tendency in those specific situations where that could happen versus strong side carry. You might have a little bit easier time if somebody's coming at you, creating space with your offhand, and then not having this accessible to him, it's more accessible to you back here. So that would be a con to appendix carry, kind of a pro towards strong side. Any of that is got to be trained, and you have to have all that muscle memory, and Lord willing, that's just something that would never happen. We carry because we want to be able to protect ourselves and our loved ones with the same mindset that we hope we never actually have to. So those are the pros and cons of appendix carry. And so hopefully that will help you guys kind of in making your decision on whether or not those things are good or bad for you. Now we're going to get into some of the tips for appendix carry and how to make it successful if it is something that you want to try to do. All right, so the first pro tip for appendix carry is going to be get yourself a good holster. And by good holster, I mean one that is meant to be carried appendix. Now we have several options available on our website. Feel free to check them out. But even if you're not going to buy from us, you're going to buy from somebody else, do keep in mind what is going to make a good appendix holster. First and foremost, one of the biggest things about an appendix holster that you really need to have is an appendix wing. So I'll throw a little graphic up here, but give you a close-up of what these appendix wings look like. Now they come in a couple different shapes and sizes. Each company kind of has their own way of doing it. The mod wing that you see on this holster is an extremely popular option. There's a lot of different companies that use mod wings, but there's also other options out there. We had a few of our older model holsters that used a Kydex wing, like you can see here, but then we also have these newer mini wings that we've replaced them with that also do a really, really good job. Now, why are these appendix wings or claws or whatever it is that people decide to call them so important? Well, in the appendix position, when we put the holster in, we have a tendency to have the grip of our firearm to want to sit out in front of our belt. It kind of wants to push out away from our body. That's just based off of the way the holster is designed. The flattest part of the holster is going to be back here. This is going to want to sit up against your appendix position, and your body's going to curve around. Well, the problem is that the grip of our firearm does not want to curve with our body. It's going to have a tendency to stick out. By putting the appendix wing on the holster, this is going to sit behind your belt line, and as you tighten that belt down, it's going to want to push back and kind of create that space. And so instead of our body curving around like this is going to sit behind our belt, and it's going to push that grip back with that curve of our body. It's going to sit this in much tighter. It's going to allow our shirt to drape over it, and it's going to make it much, much more concealable. Now, the other thing that we want to think about when we're choosing a good appendix holster is the adjustability of the holster. So one of the things that a lot of people will find if you have a little bit more of a gut and you're trying to carry in the appendix position is that the firearm sits up high enough that it gets into your stomach and it can become uncomfortable. One of the greatest things to do to adjust that, and what I do to a lot of my holsters, is find a holster that has some sort of an adjustable clip. You can see this is one of my personal ones here that I've already done this to. This has got the Discreet Carry Concepts HLR Mod 4 clips. I've talked about these in the past. They're great clips. We offer them on the website because they're probably one of the best clips on the market. But what they allow is the holster to be adjusted for right height inside of our belt. So if I am carrying this is a little bit bigger of a firearm. It's the equivalent of a Glock 17. It has a light on it, the whole 9 yards. But this is going to want to have a tendency to sit up a little bit higher. By putting these clips on it and adjusting these clips up higher on the holster, I can drop everything down into my pants a little bit further. That's going to give me more breathing room per se on top of this and make it much more comfortable to carry. So now once we have a good holster and it has all the features that we need to make it successful in the appendix carry position, the next thing we want to think about is where we actually put it in this appendix position. So like I said earlier, appendix can be anywhere between kind of your 12 and your 130 position. What most people are going to find if they are finding the most comfortable spot is not quite exactly in front. It's a little bit off to the side and kind of in that line that is created between your leg and your groin. That is a pretty ergonomic spot to have the slide of the firearm going down, and it tends to be the area that gives us the most mobility and comfort while we are carrying. Now, past the holster placement, past the holster itself, we also want to dress accordingly. So if you are somebody that likes to wear really, really tight clothes, you're going to have a hard time conceal carrying a firearm pretty much anywhere. It's kind of not even specific to appendix carry, it's just carry in general. We want to wear a little bit looser fitting clothing, at least looser fitting around where the firearm is going to be. If you want something that's got tight sleeves to show the guns off, by all means, but at least how it fits around our waistlines, we want something that's a little bit looser, that's going to have the ability to drape over the firearm and not conform to it. Otherwise, you're going to have a printing nightmare. Now, something else to keep in mind as far as dressing accordingly is get yourself a good belt. I've talked about this a bunch. If you haven't seen the video that I've done, I think I did last week on choosing a concealed carry belt, definitely go take a look at that. It's a game changer for appendix carry, also in strong side, but it just concealed carry in general, having a good belt's great. But besides the belt, we also want to think about the layers of clothing that we're wearing. Now, again, this is not even specific just to appendix carry. This is just kind of a concealed carry rule. But if you are wearing multiple layers, if you're somebody that likes to put a t-shirt on, maybe a flannel on top of it, especially now that it's getting colder outside, we're even putting sweatshirts, hoodies, or jackets on over top of all of that, we want to be mindful of how much we're having to get out of the way in order to get to our firearm. So the good pro tip, kind of what most people are going to recommend, is that you only want to have one layer between your firearm and the outside world. Anything else, you kind of want to tuck in behind that. Now, that's going to be difficult if you're wearing a whole bunch of layers, but the good rule of thumb is, say that I'm wearing a t-shirt and I'm wearing a flannel. And if I'm wearing a jacket in front of that, I'm just going to leave the jacket unzipped, so we're kind of not really count that as a layer. But I'm going to tuck my t-shirt in, I'm going to put my holster on, and then my flannel will be on over top of that. I still have everything concealed. The flannel is concealing the firearm, but when I go to draw, I'm not trying to grab multiple layers of clothing and get them out of the way. The bad thing that happens is I grab the top layer, I don't grab the bottom layer, I yank up on it, and when I go to grab my firearm, I'm grabbing the shirt underneath because it didn't come up. So we want to make sure we get a lot of that behind the firearm so that when we're grabbing and yanking, we're only grabbing that one layer that needs to be out of the way, and then we have access to the firearm. Now, next pro tip is going to be in the selection of the firearm itself. So like I said earlier, we tend to have a little bit easier of a time carrying bigger firearms in the appendix position, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want to carry anything that we want. Now, as demonstration, I have been carrying this the entire time. This is a Glock 34 with a Surefire X300. It's a pretty stinking big gun, and I have been able to carry it this entire time. I'm not sure if anybody's seen it printing or not, but kind of cool. Also in this appendix position, I have a spare mag. I also threw a knife on there just for S's and G's. Now, I don't carry the knife typically, but there is room for it, and I can carry all of it and actually still conceal pretty easily in this appendix position. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that everybody that carries appendix is going to be able to carry a firearm of this size. We do want to be mindful of carrying all day long. And I'll be the first to tell you, as much as I can stand here comfortably and conceal this right now, if you ask me to go sit in my car for 2 hours or sit at a desk and edit videos for these YouTube videos for a couple of hours, this holster's coming off. Because that long of a holster, especially adding the light to it, it's just not comfortable to sit for prolonged periods of time. Now, if you were to ask me to carry this is my actual EDC, my X Macro. Now, this even does have the longer compensated slide and everything on it. I can wear this thing all day long. I have actually worn this on multiple very, very long car trips, and I can sit at the desk all day long with this on and have no issue with it at all. You'll notice it doesn't have a light, it doesn't have a whole bunch of extra length to it, but this is kind of my sweet spot for appendix carry. But in our firearm selection, we do want to be mindful of all the accessories we're putting on it. It's really easy to buy a gun and then you go watch a couple of YouTube videos and you see everybody that's got the real tricked out ones. They got the flared mag wells and the red dots and all the cool accessories, the flashlights and all that stuff. And those things are great, and those things are a lot more fun to shoot at the range with. But when we get into concealed carry, we do want to be more mindful of how that stuff is actually going to conceal on our bodies and how comfortable that's going to be over prolonged periods of time. So the biggest two things that are going to affect your concealment if you are looking at adding accessories are flashlights and flared mag wells. Flashlights because you're just adding the extra bulk, and if you have a shorter slided firearm but you're throwing on a full-size light, that's going to be longer than the slide, so you got to be mindful that that's going to make the holster that much longer. And then flared mag wells, because like I said earlier, the grip is the section that we are worried the most about concealing in the appendix carry position, and so having that flared mag well, yeah, it looks cool, yeah, it feels great, maybe the reloads are actually easier with it, but if it's flared out, that's going to be a little bit harder to conceal. Not for everybody, but you know, just each your own, try it out, do some research into it and find out if it's actually going to be something good for you. But be mindful of it in choosing the firearm for your appendix carry setup. And then the last one is going to be practice. So in any of the positions you decide to carry, we do want to make sure that we are practicing. Now that doesn't necessarily have to be actually shooting at the range. It's obviously a little hard in today's economy to afford the range time, maybe afford the ammo, especially after having put the holster together and the firearm and all that kind of stuff. But we can dry fire at home and build on all the mechanics shy of pulling the trigger that it takes to successfully conceal carry a firearm. So just a little quick rundown of what that looks like in the appendix position. Again, I showed the video earlier. We want to grab our shirt with our left hand. We want to kind of gross motor skill this. So don't think about grabbing the bottom of your shirt and trying to get a hold of the hem down here. And you don't want to be just grabbing it with a finger or two. Just take your entire hand, put it on your stomach, and grab everything at once. Make sure you get a good grip of that shirt. And then we're going to pull up. Once we have it cleared from our firearm, our draw hand is going to come down. Now, a good rule of thumb when carrying at the appendix position, we can't typically get our thumb behind the grip here. It's going to be pretty difficult because of our stomach being up against the firearm. So we want to get our hand, and typically what I'll do is I can get my fingers around the grip. I'll have my trigger finger pointing forward, kind of just along the side of the slide where it's going to be when I draw. And then I like to take my thumb and rest it along the back of the slide. Then when I draw from this position, I'm going to pull the firearm out and then drop my shirt, obviously with my left hand. I want to gain control with my left hand on the firearm too. And then as I am presenting forward, I'm going to fold my thumb around the back of the firearm and rest it on my support hand here. Now, your typical thumbs forward grip, going to be kind of the go-to. It's what everybody says is the best, both in the competition and in the duty world of shooting guns for work or anything like that. But both thumbs forward, you're going to have your hands underneath of the firearm here. Take these 3 fingers or 4 fingers, however you want to do it, and wrap that around your 3 fingers of your firing hand and get a really, really good grip of that firearm. We want to get our hand as high into the beaver tail, this portion of the back of your firearm here, that's your beaver tail. You want the meat between our thumb and our forefinger to be up into that as high as possible. The reason for that is physics. When you shoot this gun, it wants to rock. The bullet comes out this end, equal and opposite reaction is the slide, and all that mass of the slide is pushing back the opposite direction. If I grab it down here, that creates a longer distance between where the force is being applied and where I have control of the firearm, which means I'm going to feel more of that force. Getting my hand as high up and as close as possible to the back of this slide means that all of that recoil has less of a distance, less of that moment arm to act on my body, and it means that my shoulder, my wrist, my arm, my whole entire body here has more of a tendency to be able to absorb that recoil. So we want to come up in that position, want to present forward, and that's that from there. Now, I'm no firearm instructor, so once it comes out of the holster and gets to here, there are plenty more qualified people to teach you guys on that. There, I'm sure, is a wealth of YouTube videos on those specific details. But before I reholster this thing, the next biggest and most important thing of shooting and carrying in the appendix position is we obviously have our draw, but we do need to reholster. Now, you'll see a lot of the guys that are out shooting on the range, shooting thousands of rounds a day or year, whatever, and they just grab it and they throw it back in real fast and they look cool. They're talking to you the entire time and they make it look neat. From the beginner's perspective or somebody getting used to appendix carry, the big thing we want to be mindful of when reholstering is, as you can see, I have let my shirt go. My shirt is now draped back over my holster. Now I'm going to grab this, I'm going to pull it out of the way, kind of similar to what I did the last time. You can see that maybe it's not completely out of the way. Maybe when I go to reholster this, it kind of gets hung up. So we want to be extra careful when we are reholstering in the appendix position. Now is the time that we can use the fine motor skills, grab the bottom hem of your shirt and get it completely out of the way. And then we want to look this firearm back into the holster. That means I'm going to actually look down, I'm going to see my holster, I'm going to get this positioned correctly, my fingers out of the trigger guard. I can see that there is no other stuff that's in the middle of that trigger guard, and I can push down from there. From that point, I can then put the shirt back over top. But A lot of times what we'll see for accidents in the appendix carry position is the negligent discharges that result from goofing off and just getting stuff stuck in there that shouldn't be. So look your firearm back into its holster, make sure that you're being as safe as possible with it. All right, so that's gonna kind of wrap things up on our guide to appendix carry. Now, there are, I'm sure, a bunch of other things that we could have touched on. I feel like the video is getting long enough as it was, so we're gonna cut it off here. That kind of covers the main basis of appendix carrying for beginners. But if you have any other questions, anything that you've thought of that I did not talk about, please feel free to send us a question. You can either comment in the YouTube video that you're watching now. You can also send us an email through our website. And we have a contact us page, or you can just email us directly at info@risenholsterco.com. Feel free to send any questions you can think of, if it's related to the holsters, if it's related to appendix carry, or any of the stuff, like I said, that we've talked about today. Definitely reach out. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for all of those that are continuing to support us. And one more time, if you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel, please do so. Definitely helps us with getting more of these videos out to you guys. But we'll see you on the next one. God bless.